name is Kalkidan Mulugeta, and I am happily employed, working for a mobile technology company here in Nairobi. I have a public health background. I'm very, very passionate about health and technology solutions, especially in the African context. I am a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, and most appropriately, I'm a most recent grad of Centonomy. So I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm very honored. And when Washeke asked me to share my story, I was, initially I was a little perplexed. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna share about. I'm just working 9 to 5, I have all these dreams. But I realized quickly that there's also a space for people like me, and hopefully a lot of you will resonate with my story. As Alex mentioned, I have roots in Ethiopia. I was born there. However, I grew up right up the street here in Nairobi, so I'm very much Kenyan bred. So my journey to Centonomy, I came to learn and to find out about Centonomy through a very dear friend of mine. Now, when your friend asks you to take Centonomy, it could mean one of two things. It could be a huge hint, like you need to shape up your financial life, or it could just be, it could actually just be genuine. So initially, when I got the email from my friend, I was a little perplexed. I was like, hey, okay. So I watched a lot of the videos on YouTube, which I would really, really encourage all of you to watch. They were very insightful, and it was very interesting to see that people who have actually gained what I would consider financial success, and what I would consider wealthy people, actually took the time to take the class. So I was very drawn to it. And in hindsight, it's probably the best investment I made in 2015. So I'm just going to carry through three main concepts that I think I learned that were very, very, that spearheaded this Centonomy journey for me. The first one is know your objective. Alex touched on this a little bit. Throughout the 11-week journey at Centonomy, I almost want to say that every single instructor kept repeating this. And when I say know your objective, it means know why you're investing, yeah? So during Centonomy, it's a 101 class on finances. And you will learn everything from bonds to buying land to property development, property management. And they're very, very interesting. I mean, I think for every course, I was like, have I been sleeping my whole life? I mean, you want to do it all. But they kept coming back to us and asking, what is your objective? And I think we can all agree in this interrelated, interconnected city that we live in, we're always hearing about lucrative opportunities. There's always, a plot to buy in Namanga or, an apartment to buy in Ruaka, and you all just want to run in droves and buy it. But then you have to sit down and ask yourself, what is my objective? Why am I investing in this? Does this make sense to me? Do I want to be wealthy? What does being wealthy mean to me? And it sounds like a very simple concept, but it's actually quite powerful because your objective changes. The more you expose yourself, the more you learn, the more you take Centonomy, you start to widen your scope and to understand what objectives you should have and the fact that they should be smart. Along with your objectives, you have to define what wealth means to you personally, what success means to you. If you define success based on maybe what Bill Gates, defines it as, then you're probably not off on a good start because he has different resources, he's in a different environment. So you have to sit down and you have to ask yourself, what to me means wealthy? What to me means successful? And I always like to ask my friends that question. I always go to them and ask them, and you'll be amazed. Sometimes it's not quite what we think it is. But once you figure that out, then you're able to go and have objectives, measurable, smart objectives. The second concept I want to talk about is, it's actually a sentence. I tried to make it a word, but there is no better way to say it. And the sentence is that fear makes you stupid. Yeah? Can you repeat after me? Can we all say fear makes you stupid? Yeah, and I really hope you can internalize that. It's something that I've struggled with in my life, and we actually covered this in one of the in the modules. Once we entered class, we were put into groups and we were asked to create a business that would generate 30 million shillings within 3 years. And we had an hour to come up with this business. It had to be very innovative. It had to be, something realistic. And then after that, we'd present it to the class. And I was just blown away by each and every single business case because it was so specific to the issues that we deal with here in Nairobi and Kenya. And after that, Washeke stood up and she said, so, now what? Are you still going to be happily employed? Are you still going to, why can't you do this? And one of the first things that came out was fear. Fear immobilizes you. And one distinguishing factor that we learned is that there is being fearful, which cripples you, you don't move, and then there is being scared, yeah? And I like to term it differently. Instead of being scared, because scared kind of has a negative connotation, maybe taking caution, right? So you could either be fearful, where you don't move, you have all these ideas, you have all these thoughts, you're stuck in traffic for 5 hours because of the flooding, and you have all these ideas of how you can help our government fix them, but you don't move because you're like, you know what, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, I'll just stay where I am. Or there's taking caution, where you're proceeding, yeah, but you're cautious, you're using discernment. I've personally struggled with that, and I think a lot of us have. About 2 years ago, each time I'd come back home when I was studying in the US, each time I'd come home, I'd just be shocked at the number of accidents on our roads. And it was something that I saw both here and in my home country. And I started to think, this is actually a public health issue. There's so many things that are going wrong. And so every time I'd go back, I'd be like, I should do something about it. But then I'm like, no, really, I don't have the experience, I don't have the connections. And one day, I just decided, I said, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna put a proposal together, and I'm gonna try and get some money to do this. And I went and I spoke to my mentor at the time. And she looked at the proposal and she was like, you know what, okay, it looks good, but I don't really know who's gonna fund you because this is it's not a sexy idea, it's not a popular idea, it's not the in thing. But she said, you know what though, let's do it, let's proceed with caution. So we proceeded, and we got so much funding for this idea. It was unbelievable. And I was able to go and to act upon something in spite of being scared, in spite of having caution. One of my favorite quotes by Tata Mandela, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, says, "May your choices be a reflection of your hopes and not your fears." Think about it. The last thing I want to delve on to is the whole idea of making choices. And I named this, saying yes to one thing means saying no to another. Yeah? How many of us here would like to be more fit? Just going to use that. Okay, not so many people, so not a good example. I guess we're all fit. But just to use that example, being fit, being in shape, takes a lot of sacrifice. It could mean waking up a little early every morning. It could mean, changing your diet. But ultimately, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And actually, literally, given this example. If you want to stay in shape, if you choose that you're going to work out every morning, then that means you have to sacrifice. You have to make choices the night before. You have to wake up early in the morning. You have to say no to sleep. You have to say no to certain things. And it's the same thing with your life. It's the same thing with your financial life. We did financial planning at Centonomy. And it was quite introspective. Washeke asked us to think about where we want to be in 30 years. And I don't know if any one of you have actually thought through where you want to be in 30 years. For me, it was quite a powerful exercise to think about exactly what I want to be doing at age 60. Well, I just gave away my age. But I always thought I just want to be happy, peaceful, just the things that we all want. But when we were actually asked to write down exactly what we want and put figures to it, it was probably it was a lot more scary than I thought it would be. But what that did for me is that I started to list things. I started to research. I started to ask myself, okay, really, I can't have 5 kids if I want to achieve this, or I can't have one child. I have to be so specific. I mean, life is not going to always work out how you want, but that does not mean you don't plan. But what that exercise did then, it made me trace back to where I am today, yeah? So now 30 years to today. And to figure out, in order to get to have what I want in 60 years, then I have to be earning this much. So if I'm at a job where I'm only earning X amount, then I either have to boost up my education or I have to get a side hustle. But it made things so much more clear, which then goes back to knowing your objective. Because it was about, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to be earning. I'm not even looking left, right, and center. You could be buying your plots in Namanga, which is good. I'm not against buying plots. But it just makes you, it clears all the clutter away and makes you focus on one thing. When I said happily employed, it is, happily is a positive connotation. However, being happily employed can actually be your worst enemy because you're in your comfort zone. And for me, taking this class really, really woke me up to that fact. I was like, I'm actually happy. I actually love my job. But you know what? I'm building someone else's factory. I have dreams. I have a purpose as to why I was brought into this earth. And I have to define what that purpose is going to be. It doesn't mean I'm going to leave my employment in case my employer is here. I love what I do, but that just means that I have to relentlessly pursue what I need to pursue. This morning I was reading my devotion and I came across the word amazing things. And in the side margin, it said that the Hebrew word for amazing things is pala, P-A-L-A. And pala, the definition of pala in Hebrew means to distinguish yourself and to separate yourself. And I thought that was very profound. I want to close with an experience that I embarked on earlier this year. I've always wanted to get to the top of Uhuru, which is the highest point in Africa, to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And climbing Mount Kilimanjaro took me 2 years, 2 whole years. And by that, I mean, it took me 2 years of training. It took me 2 years of research. It took me 2 years of stalking everyone who had climbed that mountain. It took me 2 years of whichever city I was in, I would find a hill, I would find a mountain and climb it. But it actually only took me 5 days to get to the top, to actually physically climb Kilimanjaro and get to the top. And that experience for me was so profound to my day-to-day life, because it taught me to get to, figuratively speaking, the Uhuru of my life. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of pain. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of uncomfortable mornings. For 2 years, I used to wake up at 5 a.m. on Saturdays and hike. And it's not always fun. I mean, I like going out. I like hanging out with my friends on Friday night, but I had to sacrifice that. But what that meant is that as I was climbing Kilimanjaro, there was no new pain that I wasn't aware of on my body. There was no new, I was so aware of everything. My mind, my physical body, spiritual, everything was so in tune because I knew what to expect. And so it's the same thing in life. It's the same thing with things that we want to embark on. You have to do the work. You have to prepare yourself. I truly hope that at the end of our lives, that we'll look back and say, I can't believe I did that, instead of saying, I wish I did that. Thank you.